Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Future Trends Forum. I'm Brian Alexander, host and MC of Cat Herders, and we're coming at you right now from Orlando, Florida, from the OLC Accelerate conference. And this is one of the special Future Trends Forum sessions where we have a live event from a physical site. And here we're trying to connect the conference to the rest of the world. So today, over the next hour, we should have 3 or maybe more guests, people who present or are otherwise active in the event, so we can help you try and connect and see what's going on here in Orlando. But as we go, please think of questions you have for the conference. So OLC Accelerate is one of the leading conferences taking a look at where education and technology are going. So if you have any thoughts with anything from video to the LMS to data to ethics to economics, please feel free to ask those questions. Now, in just a minute, we're going to have our first guest on. I want to make sure you're all welcome, and we're all really glad to see you. Coming up, we are coming up on our 2-year anniversary of the Future Trends Forum in just a couple of months. So I just wanted to recognize that and say it's been a pleasure to be working with all of you guys for all this time. Christopher, should we do the introduction slides first to get going? So if you haven't been here before, or if you're new to the forum, let me just introduce it and explain where it's coming from and where it's going. So the forum is a spin-off of the Future Trends in Technology and Education report. That's a monthly trends analysis that takes a look at trends in technology and education, the trends that are reshaping higher education as we know it. It covers a wide range of territory, from economics to demographics to technology to policy and culture. We track at least about 83 or so major trends. It's been going for 5 years now, so we have a nice longitudinal data set. We can look back and see where these trends have been going. And we try and use this to project forward and understand where education might be headed. But if you haven't seen it before, go to ftte.us, and you can download some sample issues or subscribe if you like. And on Twitter, we use the hashtag FTTE to organize some conversation around it. Now, I can tell you a little bit more about this too. This forum is an international one. I just need to explain why that's important. It's pretty easy to take a look at education at one's region and one's city and one's nation and understand some of it. But higher education is increasingly global and transnational. So in order to understand that and appreciate it, our discussions, our conversations should imitate that. So it's very important for our forum to have guests and representation from around the world. As you can see from this map, we've had people sign in from all continents, from Asia to Australia, North and South America, Africa, Middle East, Central Asia, and Europe. And we want to continue that. And we've had guests as well from multiple countries too. Now, we can only do this with the help of some generous supporters. I want to acknowledge them and thank them before we proceed. First, I want to thank LiserNet from New York State. It's a nonprofit that helps to connect New York State's educational and cultural institutions to the internet. We're very grateful to them for their help. We're also very grateful to Shindig. And let me explain a little bit about Shindig. The technology that we're using has a few key components. And if you haven't used this before, let me explain. If you take a look at the interface where we are now, there are a couple of different parts. On the top of it, where I am, and where this little slide will be just for another few more seconds, is called the stage. So everyone participating can see and hear everyone on the stage. And you can join us on the stage. We'll show you how to do that in just a few minutes. And below us is what I think of as the participant swarm. This is where every participant can be. And you'll see they're either represented by a video feed or by a silhouette. And that's where individuals are. And you'll see them move back and forth a little bit. Participants can connect with each other just by clicking on each other. Now, you have all these participants and all these guests and myself here. How do we communicate? There are a few different major ways. The first one, the most obvious and most powerful one, is through video. So if your microphone is on and your camera is on, you can join us on the stage and we can have conversations back and forth. If you'd like to join us, look at the very bottom of the screen. There are ways to connect with us. There's a white bar that goes across the bottom of the screen. There's a few different options. If you click the raised hand option, they'll tell us that you want to join us up on stage. So click that if you're ready to go, and we'll put you in the list and we'll bring you up on stage as soon as we can. Now, if your camera doesn't work or you're in a public space or you just don't feel comfortable speaking in front of people, that's all right. There are 2 different text ways you can communicate. So if you look back on that white strip along the bottom of the screen, you'll see there are a couple of things. One is what looks like a question mark in a circle. If you click that, up will pop a dialog box. You can type in a question or a comment that you'd like to deliver. So if you type that in and hit send, We will have this, and we can display it on the screen for everyone to see, and I'll read it out loud for everyone to hear. Now, next to that, on that little white strip in the bottom of the screen, you'll see what looks like a dialogue box for a comic strip. If you click that, up will pop a chat box, and you'll be able to connect with people who are in the same room. That is, when you join this Shindig environment, roughly 18 or so people at a time are segmented into rooms, and you can chat with them. So right now I'm in a room with Sidney Gelman, Patty Jennings, Amanda, Matt, Rolin, and Janet Cole. So in that chat box, you can type anything you like. It's a good spot for general conversations. Let me ask you all right now, if you haven't done it so far, just to quickly type in where you're coming from and who you are. So I'll type in, Brian in Orlando, Florida. So those are all ways you have to communicate. So again, the Future Trends Forum is about discussion. It's about conversation. So you should use these different methods to communicate. We're very grateful to Shindig for allowing us to use the platform. Now, a third source of support for us is Patreon. If you haven't been to Patreon, it's like GoFundMe or like Kickstarter. It's a way for people to crowdfund the support of a creative person, in which case the creative person is me and my work in the future of education. So if you go to patreon.com/Brian Alexander, you'll see dozens of people who are contributing like $1 or more a month just to keep all the lights on and keep all this work going. I'm an independent futurist, so we need this kind of support to work. If you haven't been there before, please go to patreon.com/Brian Alexander, and we're grateful to all of you for all your support. Now, that's the background. That's where the Future Trends Forum comes from. That's how it works. That's how it comes to be here. Let's cut to the chase. Now we have OLC Accelerate here in Orlando, Florida. And we have a couple of guests today, and the first one I want to introduce is Rolin Moe, who is right here next to me. Can we put Rolin up on stage, Christopher? Now, Rolin is the Director for Academic Innovation at Seattle Pacific University. He's also the CEO of Ramtech, which we'll learn about. And above all, there's a personal connection that I have to say, because this is deeply embarrassing to Rolin. So this is how I'll start this thing off. Back in the 20th century, when I was a faculty member in Louisiana, Rolin, as an undergrad, was a student of mine. Definitely a brilliant student, definitely a troublemaker, definitely a very creative student, someone it was a pleasure to teach. And I've been delighted and honored to follow his career ever since, through his PhD, where I was one of his tormentors on his committee, and his subsequent career leading to where he is now. So let me just say, Rolin, it's a pleasure to see you here.
Brian, thank you so much for having me.
I'm actually going to be, this is kind of weird, we're in person, which is unusual for the forum. We're usually wholly online. So I have to look away from Rolin to a camera. So if I look right at him, I'm looking sideways. It's great in person, but it looks for terrible video. So Rolin, if you could first, just tell us a bit about your current position as the Director of Innovation. What do you do in that role?
So, Brian, thanks again for having me on the forum. So you mentioned two different things that I'm a part of. First, at Seattle Pacific University, I work as our Director of Innovation for the Institute for Academic Innovation. And it's a really interesting conceptuality of innovation. As many people that are in the audience today know, my thoughts on innovation in the scholarship are remarkably critical. So I don't take the word at face value.
The word innovation.
The word innovation, yes. Yeah. Taking a historical look at the term over 2,500 years and how it's often been a moniker for things that we subscribe to rather than practice. So in that sense, understanding innovation as largely a hooray concept. At this time was a pejorative even 500 years ago. How do we wrestle with the negativity of that space? And what we do at Seattle Pacific University is we've rooted innovation in faculty affairs. So instead of thinking about it from an economic perspective, like a Clayton Christensen or Everett Rogers in a sociological perspective, we look at it as an issue for academics rooted specifically in the faculty, the foundation of an institution.
So this is in their research, their pedagogy, and their academic service?
Exactly. And so it builds from that space. When we talk about student-centered learning, we have to think about faculty-centered learning as well, and supporting, because the people at the front line of supporting the students are going to be the faculty members. So we have innovation seed grants that support all members of the community, because again, we're all in service to the students, just operational staff are doing it in a different way than tenured faculty, who are doing it in a different way than contingent faculty.
What kind of staff have you been supporting this way? Librarians, academic technologists, student life people?
Exactly. So predominantly it's been coming from faculty, because traditionally when you're thinking about new change, it makes the most sense of thinking it in a classroom environment. But if we want to expand the classroom from the classroom hour, if we want to think about it in tutoring spaces or in residential life, if we want to think about it outside of campus. So there was a great conversation I was a part of on Tuesday, thinking about support services and wellness and how we can think about innovation in that space. All of this affects what we think of. If we're talking about, if the goal of innovation or if the goal of betterment of teaching is going to be something that we have to measure for student success, we have to be thinking about all aspects of what student life entails. And especially for wellness, we have this rosy picture of the 20th century academic institution with very traditional student life. It hasn't looked that way ever, but it certainly doesn't look that way in 2017. So how do we, if we're going to be supporting academic innovation, we have to think about it as a campus-wide institution.
No, you really do. That's very, very different. Thank you. And this is your position at U Pacific. And by the way, welcome to everybody who's joining us. Since it's good to see Vanessa, a stalwart member of the Future Trends Forum, and hello to KG. And if you're just joining us, take a minute to enter the chat box and say who you are and where you're from right now. In the room where I am, I've got people from Dallas, Massachusetts, Colorado, and two from Colorado, Jana and Vanessa. Rolin, this sounds like a huge, huge task to do, and I'm glad to see you being the one doing it. But what is Ramtech?
So my background, as Brian mentioned, I was a student of his in the late 20th century with a background in English literature, and I followed that up with a master's degree in film. A number of different things took me into education, but my educational career has been wide and varied. So I've worked in formal, informal, non-formal learning environments. I started in K-12 working with students with learning disabilities. And so the Ramtech is an educational consulting operation to really support digital learning environments and how we can think about affecting, whatever the goals are of an institution in different ways. So that's primarily worked with museums. I did work with the Museum of Modern Art in helping them with some of the data from their first MOOC collection. So they got a lot of information. They got a lot of quantitative information and a lot of qualitative. And the measurement from Coursera understood the quantitative very well, and they were interested in coding out the qualitative. I also worked with the Ronald Reagan Library and Museum on a leadership camp that they operate, which is free to anyone in greater Los Angeles, and they're up in the Thousand Oaks area. So it can affect up to 1 million students. They have a week-long leadership camp that they run through there. So opportunities to work with any sort of learner. One of the wonderful things about being able to work in non-formal and informal learning spaces is when you strip away assessment in that very formal way, it helps you rethink it when you come back into the academy and helps you see some of the wonderful things that you can do. And okay, I do need to measure this in some way. But what was I getting in that non-formal space where we didn't have to worry about measurement, or what are some things that we can augment or supplement into that space?
I didn't know that was part of your agenda, but that's very, very important to see how we can bring informal and formal education closer together and cross-pollinate the two.
And where are the opportunities to tie those spaces together? Why are there things that are happening in museum education and youth groups and community endeavors? If we talk about competency-based education and removing the credit hour, why to offer more? They're doing great work already. They just don't have the same sort of formal assessment that we traditionally think of.
Well, speaking of doing great work, what are you doing here at OLC Accelerate?
So as you mentioned, we have an Institute for Academic Innovation at Seattle Pacific. This is new. Of course, like most of higher education, we are seeing changes happening very fast and wanted to be able to address that in a flexible way that didn't cut at our mission, which is to be a high-touch, high-impact university where students and faculty have an opportunity to collaborate together. So we've been spending the last 2 years building this institute, and in doing so, we spent the first year thinking about, well, what does innovation mean at Seattle Pacific University? We took the various definitions from George Couros and Everett Rogers and Joseph Schumpeter and Thorstein Devlin, thought about that and said, okay, well, what are we going to do in terms of Seattle Pacific? How do these things relate here? What we found is it really is the idea that innovation happens at a faculty level all the time. It's kind of standard in what we're doing. Sir Francis Bacon talking about of innovation since 1604, how innovation is always with us. That's a really powerful piece at Seattle Pacific University. So we were thoughtful about our approach into designing that. That was year one. Year two, now we're thinking about, okay, how do we put some of these measure assessments in? How can we ensure that what we say we want to do, we're actually doing? And we have this mission we want to achieve. Our practice is really moving us in that space. So I'm here, not presenting for the first time in a long time. I'm here to learn. I'm here to listen and be a part of conversations and see what's working at other places and what's not, and where are the congruent areas that maybe that we can employ at Seattle Pacific.
Friends, I'm going to ask Rolin at least one more question, but let me just ask you, if you have any questions for Rolin, either about his work in innovation, both as a critic and as a practitioner, or if you have any questions for him about the experience at OLC Accelerate, please don't be shy. Either enter them into the chat box or use the raised hand to bring up on stage. We'll be glad to hear from all of you. Rolin, it sounds like you're the perfect sponge for the conference to soak up all the good stuff. If I think about our shared Louisiana heritage, you're the perfect rice to soak up all the good spices. What are some of the themes and ideas that you've been running into? What have you picked up so far?
This is a really interesting conference. I've been attending OLC conferences for 5 years, and there are always going to be competing forces in spaces. I see 3 real trends kind of emerging. One is this, I think of Tony Robbins, this very, speaking of innovation as the next step forward. We're in Orlando, Florida, so the carousel of progress, the great big beautiful tomorrow. And when we talk about innovation in that way, we're not grounding it in any sort of conceptual framework. So it means what we want it to mean, but it doesn't have a shared meaning beyond that. So when people talk about looking for ways to innovate, it's ways to see an improvement, but we don't necessarily have a baseline of what that looks like. So I'm hearing a lot of that. That's traditional. I'm seeing a lot of great research this year. And that happens at every conference. A lot of really wonderful case study work that is happening that I would love to see. And in many cases, this time there's a lot of co-campus, co-curricular work across institutions, which is going to be something unique from other years. Different institutions working together. It hasn't been presented as something that was an economic necessity, but more as an opportunity for like-minded practitioners at institutions to work together.
Sure.
And then the third one that is very difficult to get away from is there's a lot of focus on proctoring. There's a very big, and not just in the advertising and in the exhibit hall, but in the sessions, a lot of discussion of proctoring. It seems to have moved away from proctoring as an option to proctoring as the normal. So at least I don't want to say the normal, but that it's assumed that it's here. So proctoring has become part of the conversation in online learning.
Is proctoring the new LMS?
That's a wonderful question. If you look at what's happening, at least in the vendor hall here, and in the manner in which proctoring is discussed, no longer as an option or an LTI, but as well, who are you using for proctoring? In the same way, I would ask an institution, what's your LMS? Are you on Blackboard or Canvas or Brightspace or Moodle? I'm hearing the same questions about proctoring that I hadn't heard in other years.
Okay, watch for that, listeners and friends and participants. That's a really, really important development. I've got one last question for you, Rolin, then we need to cut you loose. The question comes from Matt in the chat box, who asks, what type of learning disabilities are you working with?
So my background in learning disabilities was mild to moderate. So we were looking at both specific and non-specific learning disabilities. This would not lead into autism spectrum, dyslexia, dysgraphia, executive functioning, dyspepsia, a lot of attention deficit. But the sorts of things that mild to moderate was a signifier. The purpose of the work that I've done with learning disabilities is twofold. One, is there a way that the technological advances that we have, so things like smart pens, or what used to be recording for the blind and dyslexic, which is now Learning Ally, the Don Johnson suites, speech to text, or essay drafting software generators. How can we work with students to incorporate that into their daily routine? And then secondly, how can we help students matriculate to traditional school spaces? So a student who is struggling with their learning disability to a degree that they are not able to keep up in their current school, right. My work with learning disabilities has been to take them out of that space and then help them not only advocate for themselves going forward, but then how can we utilize a technology plan so they can be successful going forward. And the key component to that was always it's going to be more time. So if we incorporate a Don Johnson tool in your work, or we incorporate speech to text, you're looking at adding 50 to 60% extra time to use that tool. And all that's allowing you is some aspect of equality with the other students. But we did have, very strong success with our work.
I can tell that's informed you in your current work in a lot of ways. Matt, that's a great question. Rolin, that's a fantastic answer. Matt wants to follow up with you online. Where's the best place to find you online these days?
I of social media, I'm active on Twitter. Password is rmojo, RMOEJO. My professional website is profmo.com. And I can be found through Seattle Pacific University's
directory.
Exactly.
Very good. Thank you so much for coming,
Brian. Great pleasure.
And just keep an eye on this guy. This is a rising star, someone that everyone's going to want to hear from. So keep an eye on Rolin Moe. We have more to cover, so we have another guest to bring up. But again, thank you, Rolin, and have a good conference. Soak up well, Sponge Man, and good luck. Now we're going to shift to our next guest, and if you're new to the Future Transform, what just happened is really, really typical. I ask a few guests, but more importantly, participant, in this case Matt, asks a really good question. Again, this is a discussion-based event, so we aren't presenting anything formally, but what we are doing now is something which is a great pleasure for me. We are bringing back one of our favorite guests. This is Curtis Bonk from Indiana, who was here in last year, one of our first guests, one of our most dynamic and colorful, and someone who is talking about open education resources. So it's a real pleasure to see you back here again.
Hey, my friend.
Do you prefer Curtis or do you prefer Kurt?
Kurt's great.
Dr. Bonk.
Hey, you's fine.
Okay, hey you. Well, first, as visually, I want to congratulate you on your award.
Thank you.
You just got recognized for your achievements. If I can see the word, it says Outstanding Research Award in Online Education. So let's see what this does to the. See how this appears on the video. So it's translucent, which is really nice. This is well deserved. You must feel great about that.
It's research takes out, as you know, a long time to get out. So a research award is especially fortunate, and I feel really grateful for the folks in the award committee to select, because it's decades of work that goes into all this. I mean, I was in the early days. I was showing people how to do case-based learning online in the mid-90s, and then one thing led to another. I was a writing researcher.
And researching writing
as thinking and all that stuff. And we were doing case learning online, and lo and behold, people were interested in pedagogy online, believe it or not.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. And then people said, can you show us this? And I said, sure. And then they want me to do a plenary session at a conference, I think in Indianapolis, or maybe it was at Purdue of all places. It was the IHATS conference, which I can't even think of it, Indiana Higher Education System Conference. And that was my first gig, like 96 or 97. And so I started researching this area and doing much more case-based, and I created what was called the Interplanetary Teacher Learning Exchange, having students from Finland and the UK, and we were using COW, conferencing on the web.
Yes.
So you remember COW?
Yes.
And so I had a COW master back in the day, and we had students from Finland writing case problems in Finland, and we had to solve them in the US, and then they were solving our problems and in Korea and whatnot. And again, one thing led to another, but that was an early start of this, and we did research on that, and that's part of the pool of the things I've done in here. And so it's not just one thing. When it's a research recognition, it's really I owe my grad students and the support that I've had at IU, at Indiana University, for all this, because it was a place that we could experiment a bit. And when I arrived, people heard I had done some stuff on collaborative tools. And in the 1990, 91, I did a national survey of collaborative technologies. They said, "Oh, we heard about it. Let's do some research on it." So that also, got things underway. So it's not these things accumulate, and it also means I'm getting old.
Well, everybody is, but this represents an accumulation of time. It's an award in the present representing so much work in history, and as usual, that points us towards the future. Again, congratulations.
And when you do enough, you create frameworks and models for other people to start understanding what's possible.
Indeed.
So people may have seen my tech variety model or book that's free, or my R2D2 model. So that's what you end up doing. You start small, with cases online. You move towards creating the frameworks and visions for people, and I'm still trying to do that, and you are too.
Well, still making visions and still having visions about which, but the best ones I think are the ones that we share. Well, let me ask you, Kurt, when you're here, besides the wonderful glow of this award and everything it represents, what else are you picking up from, what are some of the vibes you're getting? What are some of the themes that are occurring here at OLC Accelerate?
I felt, I think it's 4 Ps. And 4 Ps. And the 2 first ones are very simple things, and that's panels and people. And, we see all these panel sessions at this conference here, and that's, to be expected, but really they're looking at what are best practices and where are we going. So this conference brings the best of folks who have been in the trenches in here, like Chuck Zubin at Central Florida, and Karen Swan at University of Illinois Springfield, and folks like that, Patsy Moskal at Central Florida as well. But people who have written about this, have researched it, and know what's going on. So one advantage you get of coming here to OLC is you can find out what people are up to today and learn from what they've done in the past. So the people in the panel, that's both part of things here. And I think that proctoring was another thing I saw happening as Rolin mentioned.
Really big.
Yeah, it is big. Assessment as a whole, it seems to be really big here. Assessment practices seems to be one thing that people are really curious about, and there are a lot of tools for assessment that I see at this conference. And so you could just walk around all day finding out about new tools that are coming out to help you better understand your students. So that's the 3rd P. And the 4th P is personalized adaptive systems, I would say.
Good.
And so you see a lot of the adaptive technologies, adaptive sessions and things like that. And I think that's an important endeavor that's really happening around the world in the last 2 years. We got a long ways to go in that regard. But you see Smart Sparrow here, people like that are in the trenches of trying to understand the human learning paths and trying to provide some guidance within those paths, I think. Yeah.
Friends, this is giving me rise to all kinds of questions that I want to interrogate Professor Bonk with. But let me just remind you to ask your own questions. If you'd like to join us on stage, we can cram 2 more people up here on the top of the screen. So just click the raised hand if you want to join us. If your mic is working, your camera is working, we'd be glad to see you. And if you have questions that you'd like to ask by text, either click the question mark in the circle or go in the chat box, where already we're having more people saying who they are, where they're from, and we have great questions from people like Matt. So please don't be shy. And hello to everybody who I haven't welcomed yet, who has come in since. One question to ask. We have one raised hand already. Oh, great. Who can we bring up? We have David Stone. Excellent.
Hi, David.
I'll give him a second.
Hello.
David, where are you today?
I'm in State College, Pennsylvania.
Excellent.
Not at
Excellent.
OLC.
Hello, Happy Valley.
There's a lot of Penn State people here right now. Why aren't you with them?
I know. I went to WCET this year as kind of went the other way.
Travel funds are depleted, you're saying.
Right. So we're in Denver.
We're only allowed
so one of the things that was
allowed off the leash a little while.
Yeah. So one of the things that came up a lot of at the WCET conference was Western Governors University and regular and substantive interaction, and I was just wondering to what extent that has been a topic of conversation at OLC this year.
Well, they won an award. That's number one.
Wow.
Yeah, the Western Governors got an award for institutional award here. So I didn't go to their session, but I see they're getting a lot of recognition here. So we see their enrollments exploding, as you know. So it's fine. I think it was a decade ago when I interviewed some of the mentors there in Western Governors, and I was excited about it then. I still am today. I think it's extremely important given the lifelong learning skills and the outcomes-based education needs that we have today. And so you see new entities springing up, Skilled Up out of New York. You see, if you go to knod.org, they try and match people up with skills that they need, competencies they need. They get jobs in the workforce, people in East Africa, West Africa, and they do project-based kinds of learning to get people ramped up to the skills that are needed. So you see these kinds of interesting organizations spring up, and I think Western Governors is a similar interesting organization at the institutional level that help people ramp up and get reskilled and get credit for what they already know, so you're not sitting passively for years on end until you get your degree. So,
Kurt, what was the website, the skills one?
Skilled Up was one. They try and index open educational contents and online learning, and the other one is knod.org. KNOD.
Thanks.
Node.
Got it.
My friend Michael Mayrath, who's down in Austin, helped start up knod.org. It's an interesting guy. If you ever get a chance to talk to him, he's got a serial entrepreneur type, and he's now working with doctors in Puerto Rico, trying to get medical training as his next entity. But KNOD is one. If people are interested in what's going on in the developing world with all this, that'd be one to look at. Commonwealth of Learning being another one out of Vancouver. But I didn't attend Western Governors. What I thought you were going to ask me here is, where's my pink suit? It's the other time I've been on the show in my pink suit. I should have brought it. I really feel bad. I didn't bring my orange, pink, or purple suit. I'm just stuck in the standard old white suit today.
Oh, it'll have to work. And between the two of us, we could be that Star Trek episode. That's right. That's a fantastic question to ask, David. In particular, those of you who haven't been following this, the United States Department of Education issued a damning report on Western Governors University, basically proclaiming it to be a correspondence school. And it was a very, very harsh criticism, one that dated back to last year. It was just released. So it's interesting to hear that we've got both these views where the federal government of the United States, one wing of it is criticizing it, but OLC is recognizing for its achievement.
Well, what you don't realize, Dave, is correspondence changed my life. And I took correspondence courses from Wisconsin that got me into grad school. I was a very bored CPA in the Cube Farms of Milwaukee, and taking correspondence courses at night and television courses that qualified me for graduate school. So just like today, people talk about open ed and MOOCs and people dropping out. I like to talk about drop-ins and people completing, and I'm interviewing people whose success stories out there and trying to get people understanding that, yes, there are a lot of dropouts, but a lot of people who are getting new careers or getting enhancements within their career, getting more respect at home from their spouses for learning computer programming. I mean, there's all sorts of life change happening that we don't always recognize in test scores or in the completion rates, but people might take a piece of a course or go into open educational contents and learn something that they need, whether it's Python programming or project management or whatever the skill base that they're looking for. And it might not lead to a credential or degree, but yet there's still some enhancement to their life situation that's happening as a result. We only tend to look at it as this or that. Either you get a degree or you don't get a degree. We don't look at what's happening in between. And so I think that's an important aspect. Even in Western Governors, people might take a course or two there and maybe not complete their degree, but still get some kind of a promotion at work, or that might lead them maybe to a different institution along the way. Many people use OpenCourseWare to dip their toes in the water and find out a little bit about a discipline before going back in school and majoring in it, or get ramped up for school. Might take a course in calculus or in statistics or whatever, physics. Some are getting ready for medical school and taking anatomy and physics courses and other kinds of things that people were interviewing. So it's not your question you asked, but it does relate to this criticism that the federal government is laying out against places like Western Governors. Correspondence, people tend to look at it well, it may be inferior. I may have scored 1 point lower on the exams as a result, but it did still change my life. And I
changed your life.
It did. I mean, I only had one psychology class. I needed 15 credits to get into grad school in educational psych, and so I was able to do it through correspondence and television. And then I created a TV course when getting to grad school with the person I took courses with. How's that? So,
but that's a complete failure since you didn't get a degree. So we go back to what Rolin was saying about formal and informal education.
Yeah.
You had this great phrase, Kurt, just a minute ago, where you said that it enhanced your life. And what a fantastic thing. I mean, we think of education as doing that, but it's important to remember enhancements that don't involve a formal recognition of that.
And so I think we need different kinds of resumes and CVs that understand the educational things that we've gone through. Right now, there's people presenting 3 times at this conference that'll have more line items on their resume from that than their whole formal education career.
Right.
We don't document the educational pursuits that we've had. And so in the middle of, we'll have the formal things at the top, the semi-formal or the credentialed MOOCs and Open Ed in the middle. And down at the bottom will be other things that we've explored and done, I think, in the future to kind of recognize. It might not be as recognized, but we have to start to understand where people have been laying their attention and efforts in terms of learning. Because there's so many informal, as Rolin said, as my team has been looking at these informal learning pursuits, more than 300 informal learning websites to analyze the opportunities that are available that are through adventure learning, are through language learning, online video, not just YouTube and TED Talks anymore, and other informal social change websites and all sorts of things that aren't in our traditional educational purview. They're not the things we're looking at as educational qualifiers for people today, but yet we're learning a lot in these ways through OpenCourseWare and Open Ed and other spectrums.
So Kurt, I have a question for you. I'm just wondering, since we're talking about alternative ways of learning different informal and formal practices, I'm just, where do you think the role is of either higher education institutions as they currently exist, or the government, or private industry? Just wondering, what do you think would actually really get things going and kind of encourage that kind of co-curricular transcript becoming something more substantial and kind of taking root and growing?
I think partnerships between and among institutions and these informal learning avenues. My colleague Aaron Daring is the only one I follow on Twitter. I'm sorry about that, but Brian. But Aaron has a website called Chasing Seals, and he has National Geographic funding for his adventures around the world. He has Earthucation, climate change around the world. He has geoauthentic learning, geography around the world. Looking at points of interest like the Louvois, kids understanding that, the Polar Husky Project following explorers to the north. And he has north of 60, looking at cultures of the world, north of 60 degrees latitude. A lot of educational opportunities, and every week he's a new idea like that. And so, but we don't recognize that. Outside the University of Minnesota, where he is, people are aware of what he's doing. Yet he's probably one of the foremost authorities on climate change in the world. He's been interviewed on CNN, and if you have a chance to watch that interview. But I think there are a lot of these informal learning pursuits that are occurring today that higher educational institutes aren't necessarily ignoring, but aren't aware of. And so what can higher educational institutions do? They might go beyond what we see happening today in these micro credentials and nano degrees and mini certificates of learning that are happening out there, but to where they're offering it, but they might also create portals and pools of what's happening outside their institution to make people create the portals of what's happening outside of their place, to get people the credentials, the study skills, the equipping them with the math skills that they might need to then enter that university setting. You might not, your Penn State, Indiana, Purdue, whatever, might not offer all the things that an individual needs, but you need to recognize what's happening outside of your place, and that'd be one thing to do. In the Big Tens, we have something called Course Share. I actually have the Course Share LLC, but they have Course Share where if we don't offer a course at Indiana, we can then partner with Penn State, who might offer it, or Michigan State, or wherever. And so this notion of courses extending across boundaries, the informal education that's happening, becoming increasingly recognized, and maybe even as part of one's application process. So say, what have you pursued outside of formal educational settings? So you have your letters of rec, you have your goal statement, you have your prior credentials and transcripts, but what else have you done? As a way to understand that this person's really going to be devoted to his or her degree program, that they've gone the extra mile, gone well beyond. But this is a difficult question. Maybe Brian might want to add to the answer to this one.
Well, I want to pass on greetings from the text box from Amy Pate and Patty Jennings.
Hi, Amy. It's been a long time no see. And who's the other one?
Patty Jennings.
Hi, Patty.
The LaCroix Center in Dallas, and they've both.
I've been to LaCroix Center.
They wish you congratulations, and Patty mentioned that you presented there on the Starlink program.
That's right.
So it's really, really good to hear from you.
Yeah.
I think we have a terrific challenge in trying to connect these two fields, and it's the way you described it, Kurt. It sounds like the way we talk about about extracurricular activities for students. So yeah, you're a great biology pre-med major, but what have you done outside of that? Well, I've done sports. I've done service learning. So maybe that's one way forward. But I am conscious of time, and I think this is something we should return to. I'd like to bring you back as a guest so we can follow up on this. Your 4 Ps included also personalized learning and adaptive learning, which are 2 other themes that we really need to come back to. But let me, before I let you go, you have one more thing you want to say.
Well, I got a lot of things to say. She has another P word, plenty. But learning's changing all around us. Learning's become more hands-on, more visually based, more massive, more open, more blended, more online, more ubiquitous, more competency-based. I mean, there's so many ways that learning is changing in front of our eyes that we have to start making sense of these ways. And so I've got a little piece that I wrote for a New Zealand journal that's free. If you go to my homepage, kurtbonk.com, and go to my publications, there's a piece I wrote on 30 ways learning is changing that's going to become part of starter text for my next book that I'm going to call Education 2020, like 2020 Vision. 10 of these 30 ways are more about engagement. So one thing I see happening at this conference is people are building tools for engagement. And so, you see increasingly out there tools for mapping and concept mapping, timeline tools and things of that nature. But tools like Shindig is an engagement tool, because now you can have mini private video-based discussions wrapped into a major keynote session or something like that. So we see us moving beyond talking head videos to doing more than that, polling people and bringing interactive questions and so forth. So when we look at all the 30 ways, it's also engagement, access is of course part of this, and then personalization is the third piece.
Okay.
And so I'll be doing pieces on that. Now I'm going to talk about the new role of the instructor today, and there are going to be 20 such roles that all start with the letter C: coach, concierge, consultant, and so forth. And then I have my 20 last principles instruction.
20 more.
20 more. Principle of convenience, flexibility, choice and options, and so forth. So that will form the basis of my next book, and maybe next time I come in, we can talk about all the ways learning is changing in front of our eyes and some of the tools that have been built to exemplify those ways. I see you already got it up and sharing the link with everyone.
I am.
So
even on Twitter.
Yeah, if you're here in Orlando, we will be at the bar at 4:15. I'm happy to buy you a drink, anyone who shows up.
Well, you've already given us quite a lot to drink or think about, rather. Let me thank you so much. David, great questions. And Kurt, thank you so much. And congratulations again.
Hey, great to have you here with us in Orlando. I mean, I didn't realize you were coming here, but it's really great to meet in person finally after talking to you online for a couple of years. So, this guy's the star of the field. So just to be, I'm honored to be sitting near him. So well, I'm waiting for your next book, actually.
Well,
so,
I'm working on it.
Tell him what the title is.
Oh, forget the title. I'm not happy with the title. But Transforming Higher Education in the 21st Century. The title will hopefully be even more pungent. So thank you again for coming, and enjoy your award. We're going to transition in a minute to 2 surprise guests who are joining us because they are people who have received some great formal recognition. We're going to bring them up in just a minute. And let me remind everybody to be ready with questions, comments that you have. We've already gotten good thoughts from a lot of people. John Fauci says, congratulations to you, Kurt. We will start in just a minute. We have to get people seated and set up. Now, we're going to have a introducer to explain who these guests are and why. And I think everyone is in a great position right now, along with me, because I don't know necessarily who everybody is, except I know this one fabulous person sitting next to me, Nori Barajas, is going to be introducing who the guests are. The guests are award winners who've received powerful recognitions from the OLC conference. And just Nori, just in case you're wondering, if I'm looking at you, but right now I'm looking at the camera. Nori, you're the director of grant projects with OLC.
Yes.
And you work on the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation grant most recently.
Yes, exactly.
Well, why don't you tell us about who these people are and about the awards?
Yeah, I'd love to. So today we made our big national announcement about this year's award winners. for a Digital Learning Innovation Award. I brought 2 of the teams here today, and I'll introduce them in a moment. There were 13 total, and this award is really specific. It's in the digital learning space, but we're looking at a subset of those tools that have an element of adaptivity, personalization, or some form of open educational resources that can drastically reduce the cost of education for students. And the impact that we're looking at is, are these tools solving the problem of underrepresented student success? And are they able to really see increases in students completing foundation or gateway courses that often arrest an underrepresented student when they're going for a 2 or 4 year degree?
So the gateway courses, so this really targets those.
Absolutely, yes.
What would be a good example of gateway class? Biology?
Yep, biology, math, some of those tough courses that students coming out of high school don't have some of the foundational skills, but they have the aptitude to learn them. And we're looking at different types of solutions that help students get beyond those foundation skills that they're missing.
That's vital work, especially in 2017.
It's so exciting.
And so as part of your grant project through OLC, you have this award, and you've recognized a couple of people. Do you want to introduce them?
Yes, I want to start with a group from Glendale Community College. This is a couple, Sally and Keith Watt. They have used a product called Smart Sparrow in a biology course. I'll let them tell you more about it, but it is important to note that they won $10,000 for their exceptional work, and they are one of 10 faculty-led teams who are being honored for doing such risk-taking and insightful work in the field. So I'll switch out the screen here, and I'll bring on Keith and Sally Watt.
Thank you so much, Nori. We'll bring them up in just a second. Hang on, everybody. Be ready with your questions for the Watts. And again, remember, if you'd like to join myself and the Watts on stage, just click the raised hand button, and then that will tell us that you can turn on your camera and your mic and be with us to ask questions. And again, if you can't do that for whatever reason, please be free to use the chat box or the question mark to ask us text questions. And if you're on Twitter, please feel free to tweet at us. Make sure to use the hashtag FTTE along with the OLC Accelerate. It's Keith and Sally. Well, here, this is we're bringing them up on video right now, so you can see them as well as hear them. And let me congratulate both of you. What an honor.
Thank you very much.
You're from Glendale Community College, right?
Glendale Community College.
Arizona. Still hear Glendale, I usually think of, say,
California. That's right. In fact, there's a Glendale Community College in California too. So.
I'm going to be rotating my head back and forth to look at the camera, which is over here, and you guys. So please, I'm going to look a little strange, but for our audience, it'll make more sense.
Sure.
What do each of you do there, Glendale?
We both actually teach astronomy. So she said it was a biology course. It's technically an astrobiology course. So she was right, but we do it from an astronomy perspective.
Is Europa our best bet?
Or Mars, yeah. They're both pretty good.
Mars still good. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm talking in the solar system.
It depends on what you're looking for. Are you looking for existing life, or are you looking for where we could live?
Well, first, existing life.
Existing life? Yeah, okay. Mars is no good.
Not in our solar system, but one of the things we're teaching our students to do is we've found over 3,000 planets out there. Many of them are actually habitable. And so what are the characteristics of that planet that we should be looking for if we're looking for alien life? And then what would that alien life look for? And so their final exam, literally, we put a star field with 500 stars in it. And we say, okay, around one of these stars is a habitable planet. Find it. That's their exam.
Are these astronomy majors or are these general education?
These are non-science majors.
And that's an important part of what we're doing is that these aren't science majors.
Right.
These are all people who just need a science credit in order to graduate. They've never had any interest. Many of them have never had any interest in science, and that's actually what led to the project that we put together.
So you're taking 21st century science, the discovery of all these exoplanets, you're integrating it right into your assessment tool.
Yes.
Oh, that's striking. That's very striking. Friends, I'm going to have all kinds of questions for this. I'm going to try and avoid geeking out about astrobiology as much as I want to.
I love to geek out.
I can tell you.
You will geek out all that you want to geek out.
But let me ask to begin with. How did you use technology? How did you use Smart Sparrow to help increase your power to teach these students?
Well, there were actually two aspects we were looking at. Because these are non-science majors, they often come in with a couple of problems. One, they don't have a lot of persistence. They don't push through problems very easily. They get very discouraged very easily. And then, in addition to that, they don't have a lot of math background.
Right.
So, so then you hit them with math, and they get discouraged very easily. So they don't persist through the math problems. So the Haverhild's courseware through Smart Sparrow has allowed me to not only introduce more rigorous math, I've actually gotten my students to do significantly more math.
Like what kind? Are you talking calculus?
No, not calculus.
No, logarithms.
Logarithms and
really
graphing it and understanding, and then calculating densities and figuring out what that means in terms of a planet. Math that I could not have done several years ago with my students. Yeah.
That's right.
But then we've also been able to get them to persist better, and the number of students that are passing the class and doing well, getting A's and B's, has actually increased almost double.
Almost. From 35% to 56%.
That's a huge change.
And then the A's have gone from 5.6% to 20%.
Whoa! And this is still the same population.
Same population.
These are first-generation community college students. So it's made a profound impact. And we've had students who, and of course, our goal is not necessarily to make astronomers out of all of them. That would be great. But we've had students who have taken our class just because it was required. To take some science. We've had a business major who's now going to major in astronomy. We've had an art student who now wants to go into space art because they've been. Students are inspired by what's out there, but getting the quantitative math part in there has, as Sally said, has been what we've been struggling with, and that wasn't possible until we were able to introduce this kind of adaptive learning with the tools that we've been introducing.
Let's dive into these tools a little bit. How does Smart Sparrow help? What does it tell you?
It's a series of lessons that, typically we do it as a lesson where the students are taught material that they need to know. And then there's an application which sort of assesses them. But the interactivity, the simulations, what Smart Sparrow has in its power is the ability to run simulations where the students can explore the science on their own and come up with those relationships. And then we give them the math, and we teach them how to do it. Now, I teach it's kind of a flipped classroom, hybrid classroom type of idea, so that I can now use the lessons to do sort of my base instruction, sort of the bottom levels of, if you want to call it Bloom's taxonomy, and then I can use the class time. It frees up my class time to give me the freedom to teach them how to use their calculator, how to do the math. So we have guided activities in the class where the students can teach each other, where I can wander around and make sure that the students are learning what they need to be learning, and do sort of, but I don't have to cover the details. Wow. So they get a chance to do the math and practice it in class, and then they take it home and they do it.
And then you can intervene on the things that are
exactly.
How many students are in these classes roughly?
I teach one section right now of this particular class of 50 students, approximately 50 students this semester.
So we've got two 50-person classes of just this particular one. So that's about 200 students a year.
And again, forgive me from the outside. Are you team teaching or two different classes?
Two different classes.
We're in the same department. But that's it.
So does Smart Sparrow help you scale this up in a sense?
Well, we've actually just introduced some more lessons into the other astronomy classes that we teach, which are, for me, another 2 sections of 50 students each, to reintroduce that same type of math to the other types of astronomy courses that we offer.
We reach a total of about 600 students a year, and almost all of them are non-science majors. The vast majority are non-science majors.
So this is really general education.
It's virtually all general education.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. And
exciting.
Now, is this something which you individually partnered with Smart Sparrow, or was this that Glendale Community College actually did the?
No, I individually partnered with Smart Sparrow. I saw what they had to offer and said, I want that.
Yes, and Dror often leads with astronomy.
Yes.
Exobiology, exoplanetary, or I'm sorry, exoplanets. I have plenty of questions about this. This is very, very impressive, especially since you have the quantitative results to prove it, with pass rates and with A grades, which is really, really impressive. What you just did though was you went rogue in a sense, and you reached out. Has this impressed the college? I mean, are they interested in taking this up and using it in other classes? Or?
Actually, they did. We got a grant through ASU. Through the Maricopa system, got a grant from ASU in Innsbruck. I'm trying to remember how that exactly. I think it was through ASU Innsbruck. Yeah, I think it was ultimately funded by Bill and Gates, Bill and Melinda Gates, and to introduce this to the other courses. So over the past year, we've done several faculty training and kind of get them involved and get them included and try to encourage a broader adoption through the Maricopa system.
So you're doing faculty training now?
We are.
So you're teaching faculty as well as students?
Yes,
there are 10 schools in the Maricopa district. We are one of the largest, but not the largest. But I'm chair of the Astronomy Instructional Council. Sally's our articulation task force lead with the state universities. So she's got those contacts, I've got these contacts. And so through that, we've been able to propagate.
When you say articulation task force, that's articulating transfer credits between
the community colleges and other universities.
So if you haven't had a chance before, just to go back, one of our guests was Tressie Cottom, who did this wonderful book on for-profit education. And one of the things she really dove into was the nature of transfer agreements, especially between community colleges and state universities. So you're just doing a tremendous amount of work. That's astonishing. And you love it.
I do. I love it.
This is fantastic.
I absolutely love it.
Well, we have David Stone who has a question. David, what would you like to ask?
Yeah, I was wondering about, historically, well, in many cases when I've talked to faculty about courses where students are not prepared well enough for math for a particular course, often the push is to maybe look at the issue outside of the individual course that you're teaching and maybe say the prerequisite's not right, or they're not getting the right courses or the content in the other courses before they make it into my course. And so I'm just curious how this improvement has changed in terms of your assessment plans for math in general at your college, or if you've had conversations with maybe the math folks about what's happened and how you're approaching some of these concepts that may apparently been slipped, the students have missed maybe in prior approaches.
That's actually a really good question. I have not had a chance to talk with the math department about how we can include this and how to bring that. You're right that the typical solution is to say, well, they weren't prepared because they didn't take the right classes, or and we're not requiring a large math. I mean, our basic, they don't even have to have college algebra. It's a basic high school algebra course. And yet they still get in. And I don't know if it's really that they're not prepared, or they haven't seen it, or they just don't know it, or if it's astronomy is basically one big word problem. And so they look at it and go, it's a word problem. I don't want to do that. Wow. And so I don't know if I don't really know what the best way this is, how this has actually worked, and where to go from there.
I'm not sure that we certainly, as she said, we certainly haven't talked to the math department about this. I don't think that there's going to be a lot of change in the math department as a result of what we're doing. However, the fact that we're using adaptive learning and adaptive feedback gives us the capability to teach the math and still have time to teach the science. In a normal lecture format class, the problem we've had is, well, I don't have time to teach you the math because I've got science I've got to teach you.
Right.
Here, they're learning the math as they're learning the science, because they're getting that feedback as they go along, and we can code it to help both with their science misconceptions and their mathematical misconceptions. And I think that's made a big difference in how much math we've been able to get them to do.
And then in addition to that, the course is actually a project-based learning type course, which means they have a context for why they need the math.
Exactly.
So they see why they need to do this, and they don't grumble quite so much.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you, David. It's a good question, and these are rich answers. Speaking of questions and answers, we have another one that comes from text. So let me flash this on the screen and then read it out loud. This is from Helene Marshall. Hello, Helene. In the FLIP framework, do you use learner analytics to inform instruction in the interactive sessions with students?
Yes, actually, I do. Not necessarily by knowing what in advance who has mastered what.
Yeah.
Mainly because the lessons are only done just before they get into class. So I do this lesson, come in, we're going to discuss this topic. But one of the things that it has done is that it has changed my teaching, because I realized that they needed that practice with the math. And so I changed some of the activities that I did in class to be more math oriented. So I've actually written my own activities. I've included them, and I try to spend as little time lecturing in the class as possible, and they are doing peer activities, working together, teaching each other how to work their calculators, and then I'm around to go, help any, small details. So it has definitely changed my teaching, and it's much more fun.
Wow.
I really enjoy it. I actually really don't enjoy getting up and talking to them all the time. I prefer to watch and listen to the ahas going on in the classroom.
That's so exciting to have that. We've got the active learning is fun.
Yes.
To the instructor.
From the instructor's point of view.
Yeah. Elaine, that was a great question. Thank you very much. Friends, we're running out of time. And we could talk to you for a long time. But
I appreciate you having us on.
Well,
Thank
pleasure.
you very
Congratulations.
much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us. Appreciate
And
it.
good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll get to Europa soon so that we can test it out for life. And hopefully we can start planting seeds on Mars so we can grow things. We have, this has been a whole stack of fantastic guests. And I'm very excited to have been able to have so many of them here and to have you interact with all of them. We have one more coming where we have another award winner. And I think we're going to have Nori introduce them, which would be great. So again, for the rest of you, as you've seen from Elaine and from David and Matt, there have been great questions all over the place. So please be free with your questions and use whichever technological venue works best for you. If it's joining us on stage or if it's asking through the text box, we're happy to hear from you. And who's our next award winner?
2 levels of this award, and so you've just heard from one of the 10 faculty-led team award winners. The next group is one of 3 winners that was at level. So while Sally and Keith talked about a project that was in their program and their courses, this institution has something that is across a complete program, again grappling with that same problem of under success. This group is from Western Governors University.
Oh, great.
They have an exceptional program. I will not steal their thunder, but we were delighted when it made it through 2 rounds of rigorous review and judging and was one of the 3 selected. Their monetary prize is $100,000.
Whoa.
I know, it's phenomenal. And it's wonderful to hear the plans that are already in play. We only ask that that money be used to continue the award spirit that it was won. So, it's always interesting to find out what each institution does. I'm going to introduce Dr. Jan Jones-Schenk, and she'll tee up their project, and I believe there are other members of the group that might speak. Yeah, Jason will be talking too, but I'm going to pass it off to them.
Excellent.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Brian.
Nori.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a substantial award. Good Lord. So again, please feel free to ask us questions. And by us, I mean these guests who have done such great work. And keep in mind, friends, that this is a very, very recent award. It is 4:10 p.m. Eastern Time. And they were only given the award 3.5 hours ago. So this is fresh off the presses. And so you know as much as I do at this point about each of these guests. So let's get seated. And just to let you know, I'm going to be looking away from you in order to look into the camera so that the audience can see me. So if I'm looking away from you, it's not because I'm flinching in terror. It's in order. And this is what works best for right now, and there you are. And there's a bearded man here who must be awesome because of the beard. You are Jason. Nice to meet you. So first, tell us. I can read off your badge. You're the academic vice president at the College of Health Professions at Western Governors University. Where are you based?
Our headquarters is in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Right.
Right.
But we have students in all 50 states.
That's
and
right.
We also have
That's
a
right.
distributed faculty. So,
Mostly in the U.S.?
all in the U.S.
Excellent, excellent. And what do you do?
I'm the Vice President of Institutional Research.
Ah, okay, excellent, excellent. So why don't you tell us about what you just got awarded for?
Okay. Well, we learned of this particular course that Jason actually discovered a few years back. And the course was very appealing to us because it talked about the affective domain. So developing emotional intelligence and social processing skills and those kinds of things that are so crucial for not only career success, but personal success. And we were working with our nursing council, and we'd been struggling for a couple of years trying to figure out what was that essential element that we really wanted to integrate into our program that would help our students really accelerate, both academically and personally. And so this course really fit the bill. And Jason had already taken the course from a face-to-face version and instructionally designed it and put it on a courseware platform and pilot tested it. And so it seemed like a perfect solution for the problem we were trying to solve.
And this class is called?
It's called Professional Leadership and Communication.
Okay. Okay.
So it does talk a lot about communication, but it really focuses on sort of self-knowledge, and the outcomes are about personal agency and just enabling people to have a greater sense of what they're capable of and kind of getting out of their own way.
What majors usually take this class?
So for our particular project, we deliver this to all of our undergraduate nursing students. So there's a large number of those people who are RNs going back to school to get a bachelor's degree.
Right.
And then there's also a portion of those people who are what we call pre-licensure nursing. So they're not nurses yet. So we delivered it to roughly 1,000 students a month.
Wow.
Now over 10,000 students have taken the course. Yeah.
And you took the class yourself?
I've been through the faculty training. I've never taken the class myself.
I have,
okay.
though.
Oh, you have?
Yes.
Are you a nurse yourself?
Yes,
Excellent.
I am. Yeah.
Excellent.
My whole leadership team took the course before we embarked on this journey because we wanted to make sure that we understood what was possible.
That's fascinating. I mean, participants, you may have a different impression, but my impression is that most program leaders don't necessarily have the experience of taking the classes that they are trying to manage. That's vital. I'm glad you've done that.
Well, in this case, it was a leadership imperative. What we were asking the university to do by allowing us to implement this project was enormous undertaking. I mean, it affected so many different departments that we really had to get to a level of acceptance and adoption with some key leaders, or we wouldn't have been able to do it. It just wouldn't have been possible.
How long did it take to prepare for this change?
I think we did it like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'd been nurturing the course and
You'd been piloting
I've been the course for a couple of years, and so I've been through some iterations. We had a lot of user testing and some data. So.
Well, tell us about what you did to it. How did you change it? What did you transform this into? And how?
Yeah, so we took the original curriculum, which was 64 contact hours face-to-face, and we broke out every individual learning activity. And then we went through a process of which ones of these can be synchronous, which can be asynchronous. We observed how students took the face-to-face version so we could see what was happening, what metaphors in the classroom we had to recreate online. And then just activity by activity, understanding the outcomes, the purpose, what we're trying to do.
How many learning activities were there roughly?
So there's 8 days of 8 hours of activity. So, 60 some odd different activities.
Okay. That's a lot of work.
There were some easy ones, like part of the class was they watched a movie in class. It's like, great, we can make that asynchronous. But then there are some that are much harder to decide.
Sure, role playing or just kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's really big.
Yeah.
I have more questions to follow up, but we have a question from Fred Bashirs, longstanding Future Trends Forum regular. Fred, greetings. What would you like to ask?
hear me? Am I mic working here?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Perfect.
Years ago, I worked at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, for about 20 years, so I'm familiar with that type of institution. And part of my work at Berkeley led me to learn more about the British Open University because I work with them as a part of my work with IMS Global. And I was very impressed with the difference in our organizational structure. I mean, it's radically different. But I noticed that the Western Governing University, your university, is institutionally speaking more similar to the British Open University. And the question I have for you, which is something I've always thought would be interesting if we saw the British do it, or if we could do it here in the United States, and that is, would the Western Governors University be interested in developing and maintaining open educational resources? I guess you could think of them as free online textbooks, which could also be used for distance education, but they would be put in the public domain. And you would do this if you were being funded by the government to do it, and you had the mandate to do it. Would that be something the Western Governors University would be interested in taking on? Because that would be one way to finance. That would be one way to finance the development and maintenance of really good open online textbooks and courses, and making them available to not just the United States but the world.
Yeah, so we definitely wouldn't use tuition dollars to fund that work, since part of our mission is to be low cost, and so that work would be tangential to the mission of the university. It depends on the funding. I think we'd be more interested in not writing content, but creating an experience layer over existing content, so it's more consumable on the web, and using learning science, for example.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would echo that and say that, our real sweet spot is in curating content and aggregating that content into a consumable experience for students. So if we use this course as an example, we used content from a face-to-face course, but we used multiple learning resources. The platform helped us integrate those. So it's really an aggregation of resources more than it is a textbook or a single course kind of experience. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
The thing that impressed me about the British Open University, and I'm less familiar with your institution, but at the British Open University, they have on the salary, they're salaried and they're paid to develop and maintain content. And they're sort of the senior professors, and the OU ends up owning the content. It's a work for hire process. So, the professors aren't tempted to try to take their content private to sell it as a textbook. And they're funded in the best known case that I know of, the most expensive course, was funded to the tune of $3 million. So they had a whole team, a development team of graphics experts and programmers, and so they have a team of about 900 people there at Milton Keynes, England, and they develop on a professional level content for these courses. And I suppose the content could be used in multiple courses if but they do develop content for a specific course, which could then be modularized and used in different courses. And there's nothing quite like that here in the United States. The British do not, the British government doesn't fund the OU to put that content into the public domain. So they've done it a little bit, but there's no concerted government effort to create public domain open textbooks. And the question is, well, why not? Textbooks are pretty expensive. That would be one way to drive down the cost of textbooks.
Well, we've had state governments.
You could have a coalition of state governments to do that, right? But so far, I haven't seen anyone at an institutional level, aside from myself, really talking about this idea. OER is supposed to be this bottom-up process where people do it on a sort of catch-as-catch-can basis and get little rewards for doing it. $1,000 here, $2,000 there, but there's nothing like creating a Ken Burns documentary where you roll the credits and you see all the people who've worked on this, and it's a coordinated effort, and they're all being paid to do it. And for some reason, that just doesn't happen, even though I talk about it, people complain about the high cost of textbooks, but nothing seems to change, even though the possibility is there.
Well, we're gonna come back to more topics in the future, Future Trends Forum. But that's a great question to bring up. Thank you, Fred. And let me remind everybody to join Fred as well as Matt and Elaine to ask still more questions of our wonderful awardees. So you transformed this class. You took it from a face-to-face class and you put it online, very carefully translating all the learning activities into digital format and in appropriate ways. And how did it turn out?
It's been tremendous. The metrics are really great. So this guy, Diego Navarro with the Academy for College Excellence, built this course on the ground, and it was funded by Gates and Lumina and thus evaluated by independent evaluators. And we've basically replicated his results online. We replicated it with our initial pilots and then again with Jan. So we're seeing higher completion of very difficult courses like biochemical statistics. We're seeing greater propensity to persist and earn credits.
Now, is that as a result of students having taken those classes?
As a result of students having taken those classes.
So if I can make a bad pun, if this event is about, it's called Accelerate, it sounds like your class is an accelerant for students.
Yes.
I don't think it's a bad pun.
It's a good pun. That's really powerful. Pun. And so you picked like the right class to connect with other classes as a result.
Yes, and you know, we're pretty certain that the increased engagement rate with some of these difficult courses, because students have the option of choosing, you know, when am I going to start biochem? When am I going to start stats in our program? And those are two pretty scary courses. And so they were hanging back and not engaging and delaying that course and putting it in another term. And so we're seeing all this stuff. So the self-efficacy outcomes that this course has produced are evident when students are saying, I can do that course.
Oh, this is interesting. When you were describing this at first, I was thinking about the internal class experience, the student taking the class. But now it's also having this ripple effect on subsequent classes, but also this called the advising level or the pathway level through of what sequence students take the classes in.
Exactly.
Wow, this is very powerful.
Yeah, and the most powerful thing, because I'm a nurse and because I'm deeply committed to healthcare, is what happens to the individual student when they take this knowledge and this experience into their career, into their professional environment, into their home. And this is what qualitatively students say to us. This course has changed my life. I now think about things differently. I approach situations differently. My communication with my family is improved. I mean, it's stuff that we certainly didn't necessarily anticipate.
A few minutes ago, maybe 30 minutes ago, we had another guest, Professor Curtis Bonk, and he was talking about informal learning. And one of the ways he described it was as life-changing, that it would change a life, it would enhance a life. And it's fascinating to hear the same language here in this class. So it's not just the curricular benefits, which are large, the internal benefits, but it changes people's lives for the better. I hate to say this, but we're out of time.
Well, thank you for having us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. This is a tremendous achievement. Where can we find out about this online?
Well, you can go to wgu.edu and look at the College of Health. You can go to the OLC Accelerate website.
The conference website.
All the information about the winners, all the winners, and there are many, will be on that website. And we're under the institutional category.
Institutional, because this was a...
Yes, and we do have a video that will be posted there this coming week. So.
Well, great. Well, we'll look for that and make sure everyone gets to see that, because this is a really, really important development and an honor well deserved. It's been an honor having you on the program. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Don't go away. I want to. Go away a second. I want to grab you and ask you a bit more, friends. We've reached that terrible moment for me, which is the end of the Future Trends Forum. We've covered a wide range of ground, from personalized learning to adaptive learning, to open education resources, to the question of life-changing through formal and informal education. We're really glad you came with us in this training today. Now, looking ahead, in 2 weeks, we will have a really, really great guest, because we'll be discussing a new report that's vital. Now, Ithaca SNR in New York, we've covered their reports and we've worked with some of their staff in the past because they do fantastic work. Ryan Almudin is going to be discussing this new report about a survey that Ithaca did of how higher education views key developments in education and technology. It's very, very useful material. We're sending out a link to the report, and we have a chance to talk about it with one of the authors, which is fantastic. So let's look forward to that. Also coming up, we are continuing and finishing our book club reading of Kathy O'Neill's Weapons of Mass Destruction. We're coming up to the last couple of chapters of the book club after. If you haven't had a chance to catch up, just go to my brianalexander.org blog and you will find the most recent post. But you can also go back, if you haven't had a chance to read the book, and look at previous posts which summarize the earlier chapters, along with questions, links to other discussion, and comments from thoughtful people. And in the meantime, if you'd like to learn more about the Future Trends Report, go to ftte.us. If you'd like to learn more about Shindig, go to shindig.com. In the meantime, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.